sugared by those whom their owners have displeased. Why is this happening? Because, according to widespread belief, sugar poured into a gas tank will turn into a poor man's version of liquid cement and quickly render the vehicle's engine unfit for anything but the junkyard. In theory, the sugar dissolves into the gasoline, then travels along the fuel lines into the engine, where the heat of the vehicle's operation melts the sweetener into a dense sludge that gets into every nook and cranny of the engine. The sucrosed engine seizes and halts the vehicle in its tracks. But the real damage comes when the engine cools and the sludge hardens to a rock-like consistency. Only the replacement of the entire engine will render the car fit for use again, says popular wisdom. Otherwise, kiss your jalopy goodbye. It's for such a reason that this theory is so fervently cherished. It appears to grant, for the price of a 5-pound bag of sugar, the ability to effect great and irreparable harm to an adversary's most prized possession. The touted mode of vengeance is both inexpensive and easy to carry out, a combination that seems to put the power of getting even into the hands of anyone, no matter how disadvantaged. However, revenge fantasies aside, this snippet of popular lore turns out not to be the sure and deadly car killer the retribution-minded would want to believe it is. As with many grand schemes, it lives more vividly in its imagining than in reality. Sugar doesn't dissolve in gasoline, as a researcher at Berkeley confirmed in 1994. Forensics professor John Thornton labeled sucrose with radioactive carbon atoms and mixed it with gasoline, then spun the concoction in a centrifuge. After the undissolved particles were removed, the liquid's radiation level was measured to determine how much sucrose had become part of the gasoline. The answer was extremely little, the equivalent of less than a teaspoon per 15-gallon tank of gas. Because sugar doesn't dissolve in automotive fuel, doesn't caramelize, and so it does not turn into the debilitating gunk well known injury in the revenge canon calls for. Instead, sugar poured into a car's gas tank stays intact. While sugar could still cause harm if it reached the engine, but in the same way sand would, by virtue of its being a granular contaminant, not because the sugar would turn into a syrup. Even that potential harm is generally prevented by filtration. At the end of the pickup tube in the gas tank is a sock that blocks solid materials so that fuel gets through, but precious little that's not liquid does. Further up the line is the fuel filter, and what may have got through the sock does not get past it. Yet, even though sugar will not reach the engine in either syrup or solid state, it can clog the fuel filter or fuel injectors, a circumstance which could stop a car. A little sugar in the tank could be dealt with by no more than having to change the fuel filter a few times. But heavier sugaring would require a gas tank to be removed from the car and dumped out. Tom and Ray Magliozzi, the hosts of radio's Car Talk, say it is not a big job for a good mechanic to drop the tank and clean it out. The process would likely cost the car's owner somewhere between $100 and $200. Though $100 to $200 is an appreciable sum, it's a far cry from the wished-for outcome, forcing the victim to have to replace the engine or scrap the car. Ironically, there may soon come a day when each of us happily puts sugar in our gas tanks. In 2002, researchers at the University of Wisconsin at Madison happened upon a relatively easy way to extract hydrogen from a glucose solution. Heat the sugar solution to 200 to 392 degrees Fahrenheit and pass it over a platinum-based catalyst to break it down into hydrogen and carbon dioxide. The resultant hydrogen could then be directed into a fuel cell that would power a car, with the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. The potential for using sugar to fuel cars doesn't end with the notion of using the hydrogen extracted from glucose solutions. In 2004, researchers at Sandia National Labs began applying for patents covering ways to convert the glucose itself into energy, with an eye to using sugar as a fuel source. Yet the science of the matter aside, we expect reports of sugared gas tanks to continue to appear on police blotters everywhere for as long as gasoline engines power cars. fuel tank of your victim's car and leave an empty sugar sack in a conspicuous spot near the vehicle. Then sit back and watch your victim go wild, trying to figure out how to deal with all that sugar he assumes is now in his gas tank. Barbara, Domino Sugar Theory Mickelson. Sightings. This particular revenge scheme has been immortalized in the 1996 Less Than Jake song, Sugar in Your Gas Tank, and has appeared in the 1996 film, Kingpin. This was last updated on the 12th of March, 2011. And the next legend is the Rattletrap, and I did accidentally read these two in the wrong order, but they're still the same stories no matter which order you read them in, so it doesn't really matter. And this one is called the Rattletrap, and the claim is car owner discovers the source of an annoyingly persistent rattle to have been an act of sabotage on the part of a disgruntled auto worker. And this story is a legend, so they can't verify the reality of it. And some examples are these as follows. This was collected on the internet in 1999. A man goes to a car dealership one day after inheriting a good deal of money, or after a great business deal, whatever. He has a lot of money to spend somehow. After looking around the lot, he picks out the nicest, newest, fanciest, most expensive car he can. He pays cash up front and drives out of the dealership in the new car. On his way home, he starts hearing a rattling sound. Something must be wrong. So he turns around and goes right back to the dealer. The dealer is, of course, very sorry and offers to either fix the car or let the man take a different one while they order a replacement. The man really wants the car, so he just has the guy fix it. 2 hours later, the mechanics get the car back, saying they couldn't find anything wrong with it. The man is a bit wary, but he drives home. Whatever the rattle is, it has stopped. A day or so later, the rattle starts again. He takes it to the dealership, and they still can't find anything wrong with it. This talk continues for a number of weeks. Sometimes the rattle even goes away on its own. Anyway, after nearly 2 months of it, the dealer is very upset. He doesn't want to get a bad reputation. So he orders a replacement and exchanges it with the man for the malfunctional car. Then he orders the mechanics in the shop to do a complete teardown to figure out the problem. They begin taking the car apart, piece by piece, scrawling worker's hand is. So, you finally found the rattle, you rich son of a bitch. Collected on the internet in 1997. Walter. Walter ordered a Jaguar the minute he became a partner in the law firm. He'd earned his wealth. Now he was intent on enjoying it, flaunting it even. It was a beautiful car. However, after a week, he began to notice an annoying rattle. He brought it back to the dealership, where they did a thorough checkup. They found nothing wrong with the car, and told him he was just sensitive because it was a new car. But the rattle was still there. After 2 more checkups by the dealership, Walter vowed not to bring the car to him again. Every time he got in the car, the rattle annoyed him just a bit more, until he was so enraged he decided to pull the car apart in his driveway. Three hours later, the rattle was still there each time he started the car. He turned the car off and got out. Enraged, he kicked the door panel just below the handle. Surprise! There was the rattle, even though the car wasn't running. Walter tore the inside of the door off and found what had been bothering him all this time. There was an empty bottle of whiskey with a note inside. Walter opened the bottle and read the note. You finally found it. I drank this 5th of whiskey my last day working for a Jaguar and couldn't resist giving it to someone. I hope it drove you crazy, you rich SOB. Walter couldn't help but laugh. Variations of this story are: the referenced car is always a luxury vehicle, such as a Jaguar, Mercedes, Corvette, or Cadillac. The persistent rattle is created by a loose bolt, a piece of pipe, or a bottle in the vehicle's rocker panel, or a handful of small stones in one of the hubcaps. Origins of this story are: anecdotal evidence dates this legend to at least 1969, and it gained natural prominence in the U.S. 1986 when Brian Bosworth, then a star linebacker at the Illustrated University of Oklahoma, claimed in Sports Illustrated's preseason football issue to have sabotaged cars in this fashion while working at the General Motors plant in Oklahoma City during the summer of 1985. Boz eventually apologized for repeating a yarn as a fact, and therefore accident. He heard a lot of auto war stories, but we don't have any nuts or bolts in that part of the plant where Brian worked. A real-life event somewhat similar to the legend occurred in June 2001 when Queen Elizabeth II's Jaguar was found to contain pornographic magazines tucked into a cavity and a swastika painted behind the seat panel. These discoveries were made during a bomb-proofing of her new auto. According to a Jaguar spokesman, such pranking is one of those old traditions where people used to write things behind the seat panel of cars, and they were never discovered unless there was an accident. He stated the practice had been common when he was an apprentice. I have never understood if it's for good luck or what, but the person knows that the owner of the car will never see it. There are hundreds of cars of all makes going around like that. I have not dared to go and look in the casing of mine. The Jaguar worker responsible agreed to resign. The rattle in the Cadillac demonstrates how auto workers might feel about those who can afford to buy their most expensive products. Or, more likely, it demonstrates how we worry they might feel. Although the accumulation of wealth is considered a good thing in capitalist society,